This evening, I'm going to just talk about something briefly, and it's something that's kind of important. In fact, it's very important. I was asked this question by one of the people who follows my broadcast, and this is a very simple issue, but it's one that people seem to miss a little bit, and maybe there might be a little bit of lack of clarity about it. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to talk this evening about bodily injury liability insurance. So when you purchase an insurance policy, an auto policy in the state of Florida, there are a couple of coverages that it's automatically going to have. It's required by statute that your auto policy automatically affords you $10,000 in bodily injury in personal injury protection. That's called PIP or no fault insurance. And remember, in Florida, if you're talking about divorce, it's either we're talking about no fault, it's either divorce or it's going to be no fault benefits. In this particular case, no fault benefits, $10,000, it's automatic. It pays 80% of your medical bills, minus whatever your deductible is, if you can demonstrate the emergency medical condition. We've talked about that before. In addition, you must also carry at least $10,000 in property damage liability. Those are the only two mandatory coverages under Florida law. But you have an insurance policy and you have the ability to carry additional coverages, and one in particular that you really should carry is bodily injury liability. Now, even though this isn't required under statute to carry, it's very important to have it, and it's something that you can contractually address with your insurance carrier when you're applying for your insurance, when you're getting new insurance, when your policy is going to renew. You want to talk to your broker, you want to talk to somebody at your insurance company, and you want to make sure that you add bodily injury liability coverage. Now, what is bodily injury liability coverage? It's a good question. Glad I asked it. Well, unlike property damage liability, which helps pay for your car when it's damaged, bodily injury liability pays for another person's expenses if you injure them in a car accident. So if you cause a car accident or significantly cause a car accident that results in somebody being hurt, either somebody who's in another vehicle, either driver or passenger of another vehicle, a passenger in your own vehicle that's not related to you, or you hit a pedestrian, somebody on a bicycle, you want to have bodily injury liability insurance. That's the insurance that you carry that protects them in case you injure them. Now, it's not required. For some reason, the legislature has never saw fit to make bodily injury liability a requirement in the state of Florida, and it's been tried very hard. And unfortunately, despite the lobbying efforts on the part of well-intentioned entities and organizations, including the Florida Justice Association, bodily injury liability is not yet mandatory. The incentive to have at least $25,000, $50,000 bodily injury liability would really be a great thing if it would pass the legislature and become a part of everyone's insurance policy. That way, anytime you're injured in a motor vehicle accident by another person, or anytime you injure someone else, there will be money to pay for their injuries beyond their no-fault benefits. Because once their no-fault benefits exhaust, you then fall to bodily injury liability that is on the policy of the person that caused the accident. So it's very important to carry, even though it isn't mandatory. We're trying to make it mandatory. Maybe in a few years it will be. But right now, under the no-fault system, bodily injury liability is not mandatory, so you actually have to inquire of your insurer, and you have to add it as a contractual benefit. And you can carry it in different increments. You can carry $10,000, $20,000, which means $10,000 per person, with a maximum of $20,000 in benefits, no matter how many people are hurt. You can carry 25, 50, and so on down the road, up to the limit that your insurance carrier will allow you to carry. So that's something that's definitely encouraging. And the reason that you need to make sure you have bodily injury liability and an adequate amount of it is because if you don't, and you injure somebody and they require medical attention, and particularly extensive medical attention, then you need to make a financial arrangement to handle the bills that they incur that aren't covered by their no-fault benefit. So anything over that $10,000 paid at 80% then becomes the responsibility of the at-fault driver, who either has bodily injury liability to cover it or doesn't. So some people may think, well, if I hurt somebody and I've got to pay their bills, well, I really don't care. Well, if you value your driving privilege, you will care. Because if you're unable to cover your responsibility for injuries you cause somebody else financially, so if their PIP pays out at its obligatory amount up to $10,000, whatever amount is after the deductible, that responsibility falls to the at-fault driver. And unless you have bodily injury liability, you are then self-insured without it. And so you're going to have to come out of pocket. And this isn't like any other kind of debt where you can just avoid it and maybe get sent to collections. No, it's a little different. When you owe money towards somebody's medical bills or their outstanding bills, when you haven't carried bodily injury liability or adequate amounts of bodily injury liability, you can lose your license. The fact of that debt gets reported to Tallahassee, and Tallahassee will suspend your driver's license, and you won't get it back until you can make an arrangement, first of all, to pay for the outstanding medicals of the person that you hurt. And once you've secured a special kind of insurance, it's called SR22 or Sierra Romeo 22 insurance. It's a special kind of insurance that not all insurance companies carry. You've got to go to providers like Progressive and so forth, and they will write you SR22 insurance in increments of 100,000, 300,000, and you must carry this for 4 years. This is something that you must do if you want to see your driving privilege back. Now, you can avoid this from the get-go if you simply purchase bodily injury insurance or adequate bodily injury insurance from your insurance carrier when you're renewing or when you're starting a new contract or switching coverages or adding coverages. Make sure that you have a good amount. Now, most experts recommend you carry $100,000, $300,000 in bodily injury liability, and that is usually, it's not a guarantee that it's adequate, but that's a pretty high amount of bodily injury liability, and hopefully will cover most situations. Now, some people say, well, if I carry that much insurance, then I become a mark. If they know that I've got that kind of insurance, and they're going to go after me if I cause an accident. Well, that's kind of not the way to think about it. You really should have enough coverage. Otherwise, like I said before, you are self-insured for the injuries of somebody who you hurt. And that's obviously not something that you're going to want. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid losing your driving privilege, having to carry SR22 insurance. Make sure now, when you look over your insurance documents, when you look over your deck sheets, contact your insurance carrier. Get online, like at geico.com. You can see what coverages you have online. And make sure that you have adequate bodily injury liability coverage. In addition, carrying bodily injury coverage then enables you to carry uninsured motorist coverage, which is that coverage that your own insurance company affords you when you contract for it, that stands in the shoes of another driver if they're at fault, if they're not carrying bodily injury liability, or they're not carrying enough to meet your needs. So just to review, bodily injury insurance is not mandatory like PIP and property damage. You want to carry it because if you don't, you become self-insured for people you injure. This could include passengers in your vehicle if they're not family members. You want to make sure that you're carrying an adequate amount of bodily injury liability. 100,000, 300,000 is what's recommended by most experts. However, it couldn't hurt to carry more if you can. You can additionally max your bodily injury out and possibly get an umbrella coverage under your insurance if you look into that as well. And umbrella policies are a different subject for a different day, but that's something to think about. And you don't want to lose that driving privilege because that's most people's ability to come and go as they need for their families, for their livelihood, for emergencies and so forth. So make sure that you're carrying bodily injury liability. Talk to your insurance broker. Talk to somebody at your insurance company. Get a hold of that deck sheet. Make sure you have the benefits. And if you don't wait. you can change your benefits during the pendency of your policy. So if you started a policy in July of this year that ends 6 months after that, and you decide you want to up your limits of bodily injury liability or up your limits of UM, then you can call or you can get online and you can do that. And make sure that you do. And that's pretty much what I want to talk about. That's what the question mainly addressed. And that's a pretty important one, too, because you don't want to find yourself in a position where you can't afford to pay the medical bills for somebody whose injuries that you cause. And even if you're not 100% at fault, even if you're only partly at fault in an accident, you can still be shouldered with medical bills that people incur above and beyond what their no-fault benefits are going to pay for. So just remember that, and thank you for tuning in. And please remember, too, if you liked what you heard today, please feel free to like it, to comment on it, and to share it. As far as your comments are concerned, I appreciate your feedback and I appreciate the questions. And don't be shy about asking things that you want to know the answer to, because I'll be happy to take the time to do the research and get you the answers that you need. And remember my motto under my firm: it is personal to me because it is personal to you. Check out my website at cdbinjurylaw.com to learn a little more about me and my practice. But folks, thank you very much for tuning in this evening, and I hope you all have a very good and safe evening, and good night.